Can you hear me now? Yeah, I didn't realize. I don't know if you can hear me, John, but the I didn't realize that I had in another window the Twitch stream open. So then, when I was talking, I was hearing the Twitch stream come in at a delay of like 5 seconds, and I didn't realize it. So, well, anyway, welcome to my wonderful Twitch stream. Okay, let's warm up with something stupid. Did those guys? Did that one? Pretty much did these. Oop. Is there some potential in one of these? Maybe we'll get to them. Look around at some other things. Did those ones. That could be cool. Already did a thing of it. Thank you. It's good to be back. Technical difficulties. I'm working out the kinks here. John, did you see what I drew last night? I'm figuring it out. This was a cool Lionel. Yeah, the something. Hopefully not regretting. And this was a riff on this other one. You know, a study. This was a study of one. And I was a little, I was like, can we punch it up a notch? I'm not sure if I did much better, to be honest, but I did enjoy concepting on this Lionel that was, I think it's kind of a cool concept for like what if that character came back? That'd be kind of badass. But you know what I really got to do is something to do with like the Octorok kind of stuff. I've always thought that stuff was cool. And if I can, yeah. Here, let's look at this. Super pixelated versions of these things, but ooh, and the tech tights. Yeah, there were some of these things that were so everywhere in the first game, and then never came back. You're like, what happened? Or if they did, I didn't know about it. But Lionel had to bring it back, do something with it. But the Octorok, they never really went away. But I feel like they get kind of they're like the Goomba or something of the Ocarina at Octoroks and Tektites. Yes, but were they cinematic enough? Something I appreciate about this aesthetic was the way they make Link feel so small in this space that feels gigantic. And I remember in the cartoon, Link has to face off with an Octorok in like the first episode, And the thing is like the size of a house. Like nothing, and it's like he dispatches it, but it's like, dude, that thing would be fucking crazy. So what if we tried doing something like that? But first off, let's do a study. And I'm going to try and. They made Zoras into good guys, though. Yeah. Jumping robot bug things. They sexified. Yeah, the Zoras. Yeah, yeah, they had that Zora princess. They became like, the Atlantean people of Hyrule. Well, that made sense. Um, uh, that is a great, idea for maybe another drawing I can do. Part of it is essentially I want to, because I feel like it's a potentially underserved angle, is just pay attention, especially to the old school stuff, the concepts that are would be recognizable to old school ish gamers like me, but also be fresh or an interesting, take to people already familiar with the title, but not of that era, and seeing something, fresh take on it. And move into some shots versus bosses too. Like, so some of that stuff, the boss fights as they were always were incredible, but I don't remember, apart from Link to the Past, I mean, the first game, it was always too hard to get to any of the bad guys. And I remember Ocarina of Time having incredible boss fights, but then, what do? You fight those for like 5 minutes, and then you got to be on the the next thing. So it's not like you don't spend as much time fighting bosses for all of the for all the build up. It's really more about the everyday guys. Um, I'm going to move this reference image up here because having it down here seems to eat into the memory of my machine in a way that it doesn't like. And it's a newish machine on a newish operating system with very bad drawing software that I use. So I'm just going to baby it a little bit. And anyway, it's not about their drawings, it's about my drawings. I have my mother-in-law staying with us over the Thanksgiving holiday, and she's a little bit harder of hearing than she was last time she was here. And just today, I've become a little self-conscious about how much I mumble. And so, what I'm trying to do right now with my speech is speaking in a way that is a little bit more intelligible, as opposed to the last night, which was very mumbly. But I was quite tired last night, so maybe that's a good excuse. When I'm over Thursday, I can show you a way to have OBS capture that reference and have it in the screen, but up on that other monitor. Enunciate, what a concept. Yes, I'm not very good at paying attention to that sort of thing, but maybe I can practice it a little bit this week. Okay, so I'm gonna try and capture this drawing for what it is, which is a little bit silly. This Octorok design, the way it's drawn, obviously it looks nothing like the game sprite from the first episode, but this reminds me a lot of the remember the Simpsons aliens, Kang and Kodos and Kang. Really has these like pulsating lobes and these tentacles, big slobbery mouths. The only difference basically is the color. Don't look at me, I voted for Kodos. Yes, basically. Phew. Silly rock gets chucked out. Uncontrollable limbs. Here's a cool one. Okay, I'll pull that up in a second because this drawing will take not too long, I don't think. So one time, and this was probably, oh, this is easily, oh my God, it's easily 20 years ago. But I was learning about and experimenting with like lucid dreaming, and and it's a fun concept, but for me, it require always seems to require too much discipline with what people call like sleep hygiene, like going to bed on time and getting up at a certain time and having sleep journals and stuff like that, and paying attention to things that when I was younger, I had more time to assign to you know those kinds of frivolous pursuits. So for a spell, I was able to sort of induce lucid dreaming and have some fun that way. I remember one time I was lucid dreaming, and it was always all too brief, but I had a moment where I was found myself in like a sort of like a fun, village kind of place. It felt deserted, and I was like, what if all of a sudden an Octorok just came out of nowhere and attacked me? And boom, I could see like across the edge on the other side of the village, like this big explosion of dust, and like a whole tree just basically got tossed into the air, and this thing just, you know, did like a power slide across like the prairie and started coming at me. It was all crazy, and it was like the fucking sickest thing. I was so excited I woke up. Um, and I don't know if I can quite do it justice today, but something about the feeling of like the scale and the seriousness, like oh, this isn't just something super cartoony that's like, you put it out of its misery. It's like, oh shit, this thing could fuck you up, kind of thing. I want to see if I can get something like that. Dream journals, yeah. And this is all like, it's like I'd love to get around to that stuff again, but man, every day I got to get up way too early, and go to bed way too late, and I never remember my dreams anymore because I'm not even sure if I'm sleeping properly. It's all good, but yeah, it's just not something. Probably would be easier if I was like sober and disciplined and stuff like that. But I don't have my day to day is too hard to take things that seriously. All right. Well, this is basically the drawing of this thing. Let's do a little bit better. That can live over there. We can mark it. I don't really feel like I have the perfect idea yet about what I want to draw. Um, Here, let me. Oh, Queen Goma. Now I remember that was the cool spider, right? Is that a spider? Kind of, right? Yeah, creepy spider thing. I remember this thing being crazy. Nondescript bug. Well, they did a good job of reinventing the spider. Somehow, though, this is so you know how, like with these drawings, for instance, this sort of these designs can't be properly replicated in like an 8-bit format, so they just tossed out reasonable any reasonable sense of matching the sprite exactly out the window. These are allowed to be a reinvention, but in this case, this is basically just a drawing of the low poly um, uh, boss, which is great. But I wonder, like, would it look different given the same approach? Like, you know, this thing is sort of essentially composed of like triangles, basically, and that may have been out of necessity. It's kind of like how in that game, in particular, like Link's nose was excessively pointy and other things. Um, Not everything I loved about that design. I see what you mean. I mean, they remake Goma's design a bunch. The only thing consistent is her big eye. Okay. No, but I do appreciate that it wasn't just like the obvious, like, here's a big spider kind of a thing. Um, all right, let me think for a couple seconds. Hmm. It's okay if I don't nail it the first time. Let's just see if we can draw something. Low horizon. Hmm. There's John, you remember the movie like Warriors of the Wind, Nausicaa kind of a thing? The giant gorgons, how they would like, basically a giant bug that can just destroy a town or whatever, and just send um, things just exploding. So in with sort of like that sort of sense of scale, I wonder. No, I don't know if I'm doing quite the amount of justice needed. But there is something about the forward facing like pew pew mouth that shoots rocks that I don't know if I love. And I wonder, it's like maybe more like how a traditional octopus like has these jets on the side. Maybe those are the things that actually shoot rocks. I mean, I think that looks cool, but the but is that an Octorok? I don't know. Maybe the I think the most important thing is that we make this look like a scrotum. I think that was always the intention, and it's okay if we don't have it shoot a shoot a rock actively. Um, there's this pretty amazing artist that I admire. He's old school. He's probably dead by now. Richard Corbin. He did a lot of work for heavy metal, among other things. He's like a Mobius era artist, not as talented, but had his own aesthetic and very much a good, solid cult following. But his whole shtick was to make creatures that they look like amazing creature designs, but if you just basically like acknowledge the obvious, they're all based on penises. So like there'll be like this crazy huge alien thing that looks like a brachiosaurus with a huge neck and like this bulbous head, and of course like there's big thick veins on the neck, and the big bulbous head has this like slit for a mouth that's like drooling or whatever. And it's like a penis. That's what it is. It's a penis, and then this literally the same thing repeats for all of his creature designs in some fashion or another. That's all just like penis based imagery, and yet it's incredibly it's like hard to look away in it, whether or not people are really even aware. They you know they, you know, they can't help themselves. They eat it up. Maybe similarly, we can give this. The octopus has these like little penis slit, urethra slit eyes, and instead of you know, obvious puckering lips. What if this stuff looked like, you know, just like a flaccid sort of, droopy sort of, no expert here, but, you know, some malformed bit of foreskin. Definitely needs some. Maybe it's even like dragging on the ground a little bit. That looks like fun. Now we have a actual concept that will help inform how the rest of this goes. Now I just really want to make sure I get a sense of like the scale. So it's like, here's a tree that's getting knocked over. Here's a forest mountain leading up here. And maybe up here is like Death Mountain or something like that. I like the face it's giving. Certain intensity. Well, what he's looking at, I haven't drawn him yet, is Link doing his best to, get away here in the foreground on a horse. So let me think about this. Okay. What was the John? Can you look up a reference for the horse? Not that I want to like task you, but if you do, I'd appreciate it. And then really just more about the like what about the horse is especially recognizable. right. Brown horse, white mane, white socks. That's the one. Oh, it's even kind of in the pose. Well, I don't like ripping off poses, but this is close enough. Um, just to bring it in for the audience's edification. But here, I'll close this. I'm a good drawer of horses if I will allow myself a little bit of one kind of thing that I was wondering is if we could reinvent the concept a little bit with um, like I like the fact that like okay, Link needs. You're too yeah, you're too perfect. I didn't need the exact answer, John. Um, uh, One idea that I was playing around with that I think would be fun to I could see it being fruitful for storytelling is obviously in the games Link's horse is his horse and he's like right off the bat they help each other out and they're bonded to each other and it's like that's great. But I think what would also be fun is if what if what if when Link meets Zelda, either as a child or as an or teenager or an adult or whatever, what if she is writing and this has been done, it's like a trope, but whatever, but the Zelda's horse is or Zelda is riding a horse and Link meets her that way or whatever, and Link and Zelda have this connection, but the horse becomes jealous of it. So ultimately, what happens is Link and the horse don't get along, but they have to, kind of a thing. They sort of team up a bit. You know, as I'm saying it, it sounds so familiar. It must have been done 1,000 times, but just as opposed to simply doing the Link has this task and he smashes it. Link has this task and he smashes it. It's like maybe there's ways of, introducing a little bit more conflict or, because Link as a character, he's very much like a Mary Sue type of thing. He's like overpowered. He's knows the answers to everything. He's too good all the time. Like, what can you do to put him at a little bit of a disadvantage? And that was part of like why I was a good advocate of the concept of like Link being mute, is because it's definitely something that would help to give him just a little bit more of an interesting kind of character. I know that sort of thing is not always appreciated in video games. Like we want, you know, it's not accurate to the character, but it's just more interesting in reality than watching the exploits of someone who isn't really in trouble. He or she is just going to figure everything out anyway, and there you go. Sort of indicate this being Zelda here writing little, do a little bit more. This stuff is tricky. Gotta get it right though. Should do it. Trial and error. Full extension. Ugh. I don't typically have to look up references too much, so I'm trying not to, but maybe if I flip it. Okay. I'm gonna have to cheat this and just make it look like she's jumping over something. And just make this look like a bit of dilapidated something that is needing to be jumped. I don't want to get too bogged down on exactly what the legs of the horse are doing. So it's bugging the shit out of me. All right, that looks okay. Okay. Zelda, she's here. She's clutching the mane of the horse. Maybe she's intently looking forward. This is just going to have to be like super loose for the this sketch here. I'm already spending way too much time on it. All I really want to do is get a base composition so that I can come back to it later and with fresh eyes, like see the best way to finish it off. But I know I do want to have like a couple people over here running. Someone over here is like carrying a small child as like the inn, or sanctuary or whatever has just exploded as this thing is chasing them. Here's Link. And I don't think I can stick with. I mean, I'll draw it where appropriate, but Link's hat, the hood, like I can see why they felt they had to ditch it. It's just not. Not sure how that was ever supposed to. That was never a particularly realistic piece of anything. There's Link. He's like barely holding on. He doesn't know if he wants to stay on and run or get off and fight. Let's set a timer. I want no more than 10 more minutes on this thing. Okay. Trees falling. Maybe that's what they're leaping over is a big old fallen tree. And then something over here. What could it be? A castle? A It'd make it look like it was a fortification that was getting knocked over. There's like some guy like falling. We could put a bunch of like arrows in the ball sack. Kind of funny. Arrows falling out as he's going. I cracked myself up. But yeah, that basically fills that corner. No. All right, 6 minutes left. Okay, that's some cool foreground. Despite spending too much time on the horse, I do like overall this thing is concepted. A very loose idea of just wanting to draw an Octorok, but not having a great sense of exactly what I was going to do. You can always just fall back on the old standby of drawing penises, basically, and it can save your butt. Try a little bit. Let's switch it up with my other pencil that I like. A little bit of dodge and burn. Never hurt nobody. Okay. Like maybe there's this cool light coming off from like some sort of sunset happening back here. So this is a little bit rim lit. Wouldn't it be cool if like the scrotum sac was catching all this like subsurface scattering happening like in the scrotum like how you can hold a light up to your fingertip and it glows, sort of like you've got the sunset happening behind the scrotum sack thing of the Octorok, and it's like glowing. It's like super pissed off and red. Okay, now little trick. Draw in some of those highlights. Get a cool glint off the sword, maybe. Why not? Fun lens flare effect. Could be, there's some like lava spurting up here. An eruption of white hot fluid. would be all too appropriate. Stuff here, all catching some light. Loading. Shit. I don't want to let it all get too. I want to keep my values relatively segregated, separated, so things are organized visually. If possible. That's always a little tricky. Up. This looks sick. All good, man. Yeah, man, you go rest. You know, Kiki is feeling really bad right now. So you probably got her sick. So you should blame yourself. Um, but no, I hope you feel better soon. Feel better in time for Thanksgiving. Wait, wait, just one more thing. Just one more thing. All right, unless I've miscalculated, this should look cool. What I'm hoping to do is get a sense of atmospheric, like dust, that might help in the right proportion. Yeah, exactly. It's just catching some of that light and giving some perspective, and hopefully a little scale, you know, and then, you know, all of a sudden, Octorok, Octocock, a little bit of something. You just play with it like that. Not too much, but somewhere in the in between, you know, you get the thing. That does look rad, right? All right, justified my existence. Hey, man, you go to bed. I'll uh, I'll come up with something else cool. But it's like when you get like it's about like getting the ideas and the information, and then once that's in there, you just apply all these tricks, and things look amazing very rapidly. All right, good night to you, and I'll do a couple more sketches, and no big deal. Okay, save this thing too. Yeah, that's too good. I'll polish this up. It'll look like a concept art, you know? Why not? It looks like so much fun. Draw the shit out of it. Okay, what else remains? Let's go back to this thing. The Vire. I mean, there's really just a couple or a few that I haven't even tried to draw on yet. Uh, the rock is sort of obvious. We can get around to that. Lever represents a challenge. P hat. I have kind of have an idea of what might be a fun composition for those. Imagine a, you know how the first and third Zeldas were, and many others actually, were very top-down views. What if we had a shot where Link was at a high vantage point, like high up on a plateau or something like that, and he's looking down below, and from his vantage point, we get a sense of what almost feels like a realistic depiction of some of those early screens in that top-down view, where he, like, let's say Link is looking at a map and he's trying to figure out, you know, something on the map, like where's the next dungeon, and he's like, okay, sort of checking the survey of the land, and what we see, you know, in somewhat accurate perspective or whatever, but we can see across the land, represented tektites. You know, like over there in those rocks, there's tektites, and over there in that field, there's peahats, and over there in those, you know, near those dunes, right, are the levers. Um, that would be kind of rad, you know, and you would sort of see those things represented in their natural sort of environment, and I think, you know, honor them that way. The tektites, I mean, I remember being like 5 or 6 years old and playing the game, like trying to beat things like that, and like I'm really enthusiastic about doing something special with them too. The p hats and the levers were, you know, they didn't really do anything that I can foresee being that interesting. Um, uh, you know, playing out on a storyboard or a picture, other than sort of like having some sort of minimal representation. Um, you know, I don't think you know what I think we could jam out is, I don't think this is a stretch either, is a composition that contains the Vire, if I even can read that right. The Vire, these four-eyed bat demon things, bat monster demon things. The Vire and the rope could sort of coexist in a space and be attacking Link. Let's see if we can pull something like that off. Save this. Make a new image. The first thing we're going to do is just... Whoa. What was that? First thing, let's do some sketchies and draw these guys. Okay, I'm drawing this guy, and this guy. And excuse my mocking laugh. The It's just the way my reverence for this stuff as a 5-year-old, which I remember being, looking through this instruction booklet, thinking it was like these were, at one point in my life, these represent undefeatable monsters. Just, if I could ever even figure out how to get to these monsters, I wouldn't be able to beat them, right? Kind of a thing. And I've never, like, straight up on my own, really defeated or beat the original Legend of Zelda. To my recollection, I certainly never beat it legitimately. It's entirely possible I might have attempted it with like a Game Genie or something like that. But if I recall, like, that game wasn't. The Zelda games weren't particularly good about they weren't particularly they didn't have very good Game Genie codes. Not all, Game Genie was a cool thing, but not every game had the I'm not even doing a good study of this, unfortunately. But let me start over, because I'm just babbling. And I know I can do better than that. All that is to say that it's just funny because I remember when these things were terrifying, and now I look at them and I'm like, well, I could do better than that. And I really am trying to, like, not diminish, like, the sense of monsterness in these drawings. It's just sort of like they're very video game illustration has clearly come a long way. I know I said this on one of the other streams, but I'm like, if I was an art director and someone said, "Here's my sketch," I'd probably say, "Start over," or I'd say, "Here." They'd say, "Here's the design." I'd be like, "Great, let me know when it's finished. Let me know when you're getting started on the final." Some sort of passive aggressive, like, this is your warning that I want you to do better, kind of a thing. But who knows? Maybe the guy who drew these never intended them to be final. These could have been just the original little sketches that were intended to, you know, inform the guys who were designing the sprites. Probably never intended for the reproduction in a booklet. And then someone just decided, hey, we need something. Hey, look, we got these old sketches lying around. It could have been behind the scenes stuff that no one intended. I'm trying to be generous to the idea that someone might have tried harder if they knew they'd be caught out on it. I certainly would have. And that stuff happens where it's like you're rushing to get something done for the sake of the production, and then before you know it, like it's months later, and someone's like, "Hey, we used your drawing in a behind the scenes thing," and you look at it, it's just like the worst thing, and they're like, "No, it's great, it's great." And I'm like, "No, it isn't." Like, wouldn't have done it that way had I known. Just sort of super obvious kind of pointed arrow tail. Each foot has three big claws on it. The monsters from where the wild things are, infinitely more thought out. Vire. Vire. Maybe it's a Vire. Yeah, this design is so difficult to draw it well and have it look good. I'm not going to try that hard. This one about the rope, slightly different story. Makes me think someone just traced a drawing that existed somewhere else and repurposed it. Not a particularly long snake, but that's true enough about the video game sprite as well. past it. Doesn't look like there's much real thought to how this was designed. So some of this is just really abbreviated in my effort here, just to attempt to say that, hey, I tried. Rope. Okay. That thing is cool. Okay. All right. Now, what? I'm going to quickly Google the what the sprite looked like for the Vire. The in-game sprite. It's hard even just to get it to come up here. Okay, here we go. Ooh, you know what I also like? Okay, it's like too impossibly small to see. It's so funny because so much of my imagination is like packed into these little pixels that are unintelligible when you zoom in on them. It's interesting. This back view is interesting. This one. I like the idea of seeing one of these guys from behind. I remember these guys. They would hop around. And what I was saying to earlier was this. There was these wizard bad guys. I think they were what were they called? I don't remember. But they would be cool to attempt in another one. Okay. So I like the idea of, and I'm not going to get too labored in on this because there's only a couple minutes left that I really want to spend on the stream tonight. But I think I said before, like I want to see if there's an interesting composition where we could get the Vire and the rope sort of juxtaposed, not sort of in a scene. It would be a dungeon scene, and not necessarily an action like the Vires. Like if you were going to, be honest about, you know, their design, the kind of way that they moved and stuff like that. Yes, they did bounce around and stuff like that, but their design isn't. It's more like they just sort of like hopped, heavily hopped or bounded from one place to the next. And I just don't think of them as extremely dynamic. So maybe there's a, I don't know, what can we do to explore these guys and the snakes? That's the question. Even if it's not extremely like action heavy, like stuff, and the one I just did, there's shit exploding everywhere and stuff flying all over the place. But maybe we don't need to go there like that, just because the we can have something where not too much is going on, but it's still dynamic in the composition. Okay. Hmm. Well, I know I want to see like one of these guys. They've got these wings that don't look like they support their body weight, which is why they have to hop around. Just the other day, literally, I was roasting a chicken in my oven. I took it out. And I looked, you know, there's all this great meat on the back of the chicken too. So when I flipped it around to dig all that out, it's an interesting kind of shape. Different kinds of sort of like an ugly little creature from the back as well as the front. Um, anyway, maybe I can draw some inspiration here from that, especially like in the texture of the skin. Like if you go like that, and then you erase out from the other direction, it can kind of give you this goosebump kind of flesh that's just really hideous. So something like that might be fun, like this thing. And what these guys are doing is are just looking around. For Link, looking around. I kind of want to make him smile instead of this menacing grimace, frowny kind of thing. something. Maybe it is like an interesting kind of, not a smile or a frown, just like a weird function of their anatomy that makes them look a certain way. Maybe this guy's looking around this corner. Giant pillars or something. Something that feels like an homage. The tiled sections of the Zelda aesthetic of yesteryear. These guys do have their little fun little demon tails. I don't know if I love these. Here they're kind of like this cutesy kind of ear. And I doubt anybody was really thinking too hard about that. Let's just sort of kick them back like they are, so that they don't resemble bunny rabbits without a good reason. But I like the idea that they're sort of like these sort of gluttonous, they have the look of like a gluttonous, self-indulgent type of personality. think of the best way to show the wings on this guy. Not so bad right there. And then what do we do with the ropes? What do we do with Link? Let me just try to loosely sketch them about. In the game, I always sort of felt they had the vibe like a King Cobra kind of a thing. They're a little one note though. Maybe I can make it look like over here Link is currently trying to keep himself from getting bitten by one of these fuckers. So he's holding at arm's length. An especially determined rope snake. Okay. That's not going to work. Compositionally, it's not good enough. But I have an idea. Link is over here. He's like, oh my god. Barely escaped that shit with my life. You know, he's over here. And then over here is a cool shadow that he doesn't see. What does the shadow of a King Cobra look like? something like that. You know, obviously that's not correct, but it. I think the concept becomes clear enough. What I think we need to do is get a little bit more. I think I want Link just a little bit more prominent in the composition here. Some trial and error. Feeling safe, if only for a moment. Maybe he's like showing some dino damage. Super weary. He's all fucked up, that kind of thing. Ooh, yeah, what if he's like clutching a wound here? So much so that like he's got no choice but to sort of, you know, he can barely lift his sword. But he's like, okay, at least they don't see me, kind of a thing. All these dudes are looking, and these will be something appropriate. Yeah. Keep trying to find a way to like bring this more into the foreground. But it's probably not needed. All right. Okay. What if there was also like a fun Zelda-y something here that looks like it's you know, ascending staircase that takes us to the big bad boss. but we could make it look like the. I think about it like, what if it looked like a huge staircase? Maybe. Eh, that's not quite doing it for me. Something could go here. The jagged seal of the door could echo the jagged teeth on these vires. That's kind of cool. And then we could just put a big statuesque eye. That's definitely in the Zelda theme across many games, for sure. Something feels like it needs to go here, like in this space. Oh, what we haven't done yet is flip the drawing. Okay, I do still like it. I do still kind of feel like I want to see more of this shadow. Let's just see what happens if we just nudge everything over. Or just shrink everything. I always get too close anyway. So far, so good. Flip it all back. So yeah, I feel like a little bit more Link in terms of size. And then this shadow. That's what I want, is the shadow to like really be menacing. Maybe that's the way to do it. A little bit of overlap, maybe. Really show how close it is. I could hear one of my children being awake, so that's always lovely. At midnight, I think I will have to call it a night soon, but let's see. I do like this concept, though. And it's tricky. I didn't do a good job of keeping my layers segregated. Yeah, and I don't want to just detail into things higgledy-piggledy. I didn't really think about lighting yet, and I don't want to just rush it. But I will probably I like the idea of I don't always want to have everything vignetted like, oh, the edges of the screen are completely in darkness or whatever. That always looks cool. That doesn't mean it's something I should rely on every time, like a cheap hit. You know, if one thing is basically silhouetted, then don't repeat that the next time. We can get something that feels like Link is hiding in the shadows. But he really isn't. Unbeknownst to him, of course. Okay, I can hear my daughter awake, so I'm gonna have to call it a night. come back tomorrow and we'll play with this more. We'll find a good way to cinch this one up. But I think it's well on its way. Okay. See you tomorrow.